Meteor Crater is an impact crater found around 40 miles east of Flagstaff, Arizona. Around 50,000 years ago, a meteoroid entered the Earth's atmosphere, traveling approximately 26,000 miles an hour. It had a mass of 150 feet in diameter and weighed several 100,000 pounds. It was made mainly of a nickel iron. The rocky mass, when traveling in outer space, is called a meteoroid. Once it enters the Earth's atmosphere, it begins to break apart and glow due to friction. It is then called a meteor. When it hits the ground, the remaining particles that are found are called meteorites.
A couple different things that you guys probably see right away that were not in the picture inside. We can now see that first mine shaft that Beringer ever started, and it's right in the center.
Yep.
That white texture that you see around it is silica, a fine sand created by the pressure of the impact against the coconut white sandstone, which is the white rocks that we have around us. And this would be a major clue for both Beringer and for Shoemaker. Beringer was a mining engineer, so he knew about this stuff. But Shoemaker was the one who was able to prove in the 60s that indeed it was a meteor crater and not a volcanic eruption. Another major clue that it wasn't volcanic, there's no volcanic rocks. You guys probably already know what that looks like, right? Extremely dark in color. There's no actual volcanic activity right here at the crater. The closest volcanic activity is in Flagstaff. That's that mountain range up there. That popped up only 1,000 years ago, though.
As soon as that, eh?
Yeah, quite young. This rock, however, certainly looks like it could have been lava if it had been a different color. That is a product of the high heat of the explosion. A lot like lava, these rocks would have melted into a kind of molten form. In that molten form, these rocks would have had air bubbles try to rise to the top, trying to escape. It only happens in about 10 seconds, though, and then solidifies very quickly, hardening back up in that kind of molten state lava form, with all those bubbles right at the edge about to burst out, creating very sharp edges between all these little crevices. And that is the type of texture that we knew was also on the moon. We knew that the moon itself had been hit and shaped by dozens and millions of asteroids hitting it over the thousands of years. And that itself would most likely have meteor craters. Tons of meteor craters on the moon. So in 1963, Dr. Shoemaker was able to gather all these clues to prove that indeed it was a meteor crater and not a volcanic eruption. In 1964, they brought Apollo 11 here, since this was the first ever proven meteor crater on Earth. They thought if the suits could withstand this crater here on Earth, hopefully they would also withstand the craters up on the moon. We hadn't been on the moon yet at this point, right? So this was still just theory. They came here fully suited. I personally like to imagine they probably had to roll around, do somersaults, and shimmy against every single rock. Probably do the twist. It was the 60s. They came here fully suited, and indeed Buzz Aldrin tore his sleeve on one of those styles of rocks. But that was the goal. Try your hardest down here on Earth while we still have oxygen and we can still fix that problem. And rather than getting them accidentally torn up in space. And indeed, he did tour his suit, and we went back to the drawing board with different materials, came back to test that, and then in '69, they were on the moon and back all together successfully. Without that testing, who knows what could have happened? Now looking back towards the museum, we can really see the different colors in the layers of earth that we have. We have the white on the bottom, that's coconut sandstone, the one that makes the silica. And you can see, just from the shininess of that rock, those are little silica particles. Kind of like, silica is the same sand that makes glass. So it's basically like glass shards almost, or glass dust. And then a layer of yellow, high bab limestone, and then red, Bowen Copey sandstone. That red is supposed to be the top layer of the desert floor here in Arizona. So it should stop right there. Obviously you see it doesn't stop, it's not the top. It continues to go. It perfectly flipped over on itself during the impact. That's a reverse stratigraphy is what they want to call it. And it's so it's a double layer of that red, another thin of yellow, and then back to the white on top. And that white extends all the way around us. the way around us. Notice about 200 yards out, or maybe 300 or whatever, of where that white stops and where the red begins. That red is a natural color of the desert sand, but of the floor here in Arizona, the white is all ejected blanket out of the crater. They say upon initial impact, the depth of the crater was about 1,400 feet deep. Gave us a large mushroom cloud of dust and debris and such. And that dust and debris falling back down gave us the ejecta blanket around us, as well as a depth of then about 1,100 feet deep. Currently, the depth is only at 550. So it used to be twice as deep as it currently is 53,000 years ago. And it keeps on filling up every single day. This little breeze right here, although just a little, it can pick up quite strong. The strongest we've ever recorded is 188 miles an hour. But that's not every year. 100 miles an hour, though, we do get that once or twice a year for sure. And with those types of winds, it'll pick up a little bit more than just dust and sand and put it inside the crater. Slowly, the edges of the crater are coming down and the wall and the insides are coming up. They say that in 5,000 years, it'll be completely filled up. We'll just be able to walk right across it.
No way.
Put it in your calendar, guys. We'll see you then.
So that meteor is already like 500 below this.
Well, it's gone.
Yeah.
It completely vaporized. on
Whatever
impact.
there was.
Yes.
The original exploration of the crater was for possible financial gain. It was believed that the nickel iron meteor was buried in the bottom of the crater and could be exploited. A shaft was dug in the bottom to try to find the remains of the meteor. However, this failed. The meteor basically was blasted apart on impact, with half of the meteor being spread over the surrounding plains, and a half of it was busted into microscopic iron spheroids, which is in the breccia some 3,000 feet underground. So it was not economically feasible. This is the largest piece of the nickel iron meteorite that was found. That's a iron-stained sandstone. Mayakobi sandstone, and it was blown up and folded over on itself by the impact. Wow. Boy, if you look at that, you can see the angle of the rock, how it's been tilted away from the center. Meteor hit and just blew everything back and up. So that's the Coquino sandstone. That's the visitor center up there. And again, hard to see in the sun. But that, the white dot down there, just on center, that's a astronaut to give a size scale. So a human being is mighty small. Over a mile this direction, and then sideways, right to left, it's a mile and a quarter. 2.5 miles around. Wow. Oh man. San Francisco Mountains, volcanic. Mount Humphreys. The heat from the impact actually melted this sandstone. And you can see the vesicles where it re-solidified. But the amount of energy that was released to make a hole like that, all you can say is, wow. I'm glad I wasn't standing here. You're in a quarter mile away, you're vaporized. With that, on to the next adventure.